6 months have passed since 12-year-old Garrett Phillips was killed. Now, the family knows they can't get their loved one back, but all they want now is justice, and they're saying it through a new decoration in their front lawn.
We just want justice for Garrett, where, you know, somebody pays for the crime that was committed.
They need to pan up. I don't know how they can shut their eyes at night.
And the investigation into his murder hasn't stopped, so they just have to wait.
It was just a way to try to generate money to maybe get somebody to come forward and say, I have some information. We made $40,000 just like that. That's a rather large amount of money. Then everybody and their brother wanted them to show support. So you drive by this place, they got a sign. It's this place for Garrett, this place for Garrett. Half the time we were waiting for signs because, you know, everybody and their brother would be wanting them. We sold them for $7. That $7 bought another sign. So we make nothing off that. But most people, okay, here's 10. Okay, the other 3 goes into his reward. But it was a lot of work. But being that I have 2 children, I couldn't go and do something just out of hate, and then where would I be? I felt the best thing for Nick is to go to prison and pay for his crime and maybe, you know, not have another good day in his life.
In the beginning, it seemed like a slam dunk. Hillary had done it, and then all of a sudden, it was thrown out. There's not enough evidence. You kept hearing mixed stories. There is evidence, there is no evidence. This is good evidence, this is bad evidence. They have a great case, they have nothing. What little bit we were getting seemed conflicting, so we had no idea.
When I left Clarkson, I went immediately to Buffalo to start coaching there. That was in May of 2012. First day of preseason at Buffalo on campus, all those signs started showing up. You know, I was like, oh, that's kind of messed up. Like, and they're there for me. I was the only one connected to the case.
Buffalo is really far from Potsdam. When he told us that story, it was like, there's a lot of forces at play here.
That symbolizes and tells me that, you know, the Justice for Garrett signs is one way of discreetly saying, let's get Nick Hillary for this.
But then I stopped working at Buffalo in January 2013, so right at the turn of the year. Went back to lived with my parents briefly in Owego.
Some small town far from Potsdam pulled onto his street, you know, and there are Justice for Garrett signs down the road. Somebody doesn't necessarily like what Ian Fairley is saying. You know, I think that's like kind of an objective thing you can deduce.
Whatever you're trying to do, you're really just making yourself look really, really creepy and desperate.
All right, have a good one, bud.
I could move, leave, but obviously I can't really do that because my family's still very much so entrenched here.
One down, one to go.
The best way for me to put it is like living on house arrest. To have to calculate your every move that you are gonna make within the community really takes a toll on you. Nobody will ever look at you the same way. Nobody wants to interact with you the same way.
Hi. Hi, how are you? You want some milk?
Okay.
Here we go, come on. Come, Lolo. I think if
my demeanor was on the weaker side, then I think they would suffer a lot more.
What happened?
You know, hopefully, you know, God will continue to keep them strong.
So when he left the police station that day, it wasn't just, oh, you know, I was at the police station for a couple of hours. His life was completely destroyed. Clarkson University didn't want him back on campus. The public had already said, okay, well, this is their guy. It was really the beginning of the destruction of his life.
A Clarkson coach has filed a notice of claim against the village of Potsdam, and his attorney says a civil lawsuit will follow in the near future. He says the notice of claim is being made for injuries and damages sustained during the investigation, including claims for false arrest, illegal detention, illegal search and seizure, emotional distress, and defamation. Hillary's attorney says that his client has handled the situation the best he can.
Well, Mr. Hillary has conducted himself with extreme dignity throughout this entire process, and Mr. Hillary has faith in justice and also the truth.
For us, Nick's case has always been bigger than Nick. It's about our justice system as a whole. You want to do things that your kids are going to be proud of, and so I think that we've been trying to fight the good fight.
Hey! Hello!
Who goes to the bar of the park and catches the ball with the baby in his hand?
That's it. That's it. You know it's not the first baby.
Kick to Nick. Kick it to Nick.
This is not one of those situations where in which you just get up in the morning and is able to say, okay, you know, that happened yesterday, let me forget about it and move forward. The civil case was the initial step for me in starting the process to slowly erase what they had started in terms of deconstructing, demolishing everything that I have earned and built as a legacy up until that point in time.
This was in early January of 2012. And that's the first I'd heard of it. I had no understanding of this incident, the crime taking place, or anything until that day. One of the things I typically do when I first get a claim is I do a Google search. Holy smokes, this is a murder case. If he goes forward with a civil suit, my defense is going to be an offense against him. I'm going to go after him to show that he committed this crime. If that ends up benefiting the police and the district attorney, fantastic. They're somewhat stymied in their investigation. They're waiting for something to come up.
They took Nick's DNA right away. There was no match for the DNA, no match for the fingerprints, you know, nothing tying Nick to the crime. And that's obviously confirmed because had there been a DNA match, I'm sure Nicole Dubé would have brought an indictment against him, right?
The district attorney will only say it remains an open investigation.
Everybody associated with this case continues to work very diligently, following up every possible lead. Unfortunately, sometimes these kinds of cases take time. This is one of those kinds of cases.
She knew there was nothing, and therefore she did nothing.
Well, it's been nearly 2 years since 12-year-old Garrett Phillips was killed in Potsdam. Well, no arrests have been made yet. The family holds on to hope that one day the person responsible will be brought to justice.
One time I think he loved everybody, he'd do anything for anybody. He's a great kid.
All I would really ask the people is to still keep putting little clips in the paper, keeping the pressure on so that it's just not, you know, left on somebody's desk.
Why is there no evidence? Why was there no forensics, no fingerprints, no anything? And it really wasn't until Mary Rain, when she ran for office, she started really pushing forward some advancements in this case.
The unsolved murder of 12-year-old Garrett Phillips taking center stage at a political rally for GOP District Attorney hopeful Mary Rain Wednesday. With Garrett's mother at her side, Rain promised that if elected, she would work with police to find Garrett's killer and bring them to justice.
I explained to Tandy if they came to the campaign stop in Canton that I would bring Garrett's case to the forefront to, again, give it more publicity and keep it alive.
Garrett's murderer should be behind bars at this point, but he's not. And that's all because of the ineffective incompetence of our district attorney's office.
It is unfortunate and disheartening that someone would play on the emotions of a grieving family during a political campaign.
Mary Rain has made 2 unsolved murders the linchpin of her campaign, blaming Duvet for not getting conviction.
She's making a promise. It just goes to show what she was about and the situation that I was up against.
People get up in arms and people go and vote for presidents and Congress people, and they don't understand that the one position that will affect your life, that will possibly send you to jail for the rest of your life, even if you're innocent, is that of a prosecutor. And there's absolutely no checks on power-hungry people who are willing or who have a willingness to destroy a man's life to advance their careers.
If you don't have a plan, you're doomed to commit the same errors over and over and over again. And that includes dismissals, grand jury dismissals, acquittals at trial.
Let me assure you that there is no lack of vigor in that investigation, okay? So I can promise you that.
About it, I was just driving in the North Country. These signs had begun to pop up, Justice for Garrett. And I called Nicole because the murder of this young boy was becoming a political issue, which can be a little distasteful. So I called her and discussed her political future, and she sent me a bare-bones summary of the case, and I probably called her back, 2 days later, and in words or substance said, why isn't this guy in handcuffs? And I said, this sounds like something that would be amenable for the Mutual Assistance Committee of the State DA's Association, which is a committee that I had formed years earlier, and we'll put together a panel of very, very experienced homicide prosecutors. And she did not avail herself of that opportunity for whatever reason.
My understanding is that she thought that she didn't have enough evidence, and she declined their offer, indicating that would make her look weak.
Mary Rain has also had to defend her record. She resigned as county public defender in 2011, citing an overwhelming caseload. But that was after she was stripped of operational oversight of her office and put on administrative leave.
If she couldn't handle the workload, as she had said, when she was in the public defender's office, how would she handle the workload as the lead prosecutor in the county, where there's plenty of crime?
Watching the results, Nicole Duvet, the Democrat, actually had a pretty big lead, but that was before a lot of the precincts started reporting in. And as we got closer to 100%, the numbers flipped completely, and in fact, Nicole Duvet has been beat.
I have a lot of work ahead of me. I can't wait to get started, and I want to dive right in.
What I told Tandy is that would be my top priority when I came into office January 1st. Actually, after I got elected in November, I contacted Bill Fitzpatrick, who is the district attorney of Onondaga County. He's also the committee chair for the Mutual Assistance Committee. And he said he was very familiar with the case already.
I'll put together 5 prosecutors and we'll review it.
They don't have any smoking guns. Perhaps the most important bit of information that the investigators were looking at that time was the Potsdam High School security camera video that had a vehicle consistent with Mr. Hillary's vehicle coming into the parking lot at Potsdam High School.
Investigator, Gary Snelling's the state trooper, and Mark Murray. So the 2 showed up at my door again to check in on me. And they were like, can we come in? And I was like, no. So they're just standing in the doorway. They pulled out this laptop and they're like, we want to show you this video. Please know the timeline isn't right. It's just kind of unedited. Okay. let's see it. So they're, you see this video of Nick's car pulling in. They're like, do you recognize that car? Yeah, that's Nick's car. Then they split to this different video, and it's Garrett, like, skateboarding. They're like, do you recognize that? It's like, that's Garrett. They're like, great. And then they kind of split to this other video, and it's Nick leaving, and kind of always prefacing it that this isn't the final cut. And then, like, Nick leaves, and they're like, well, what way would he go to his house? I was like, well, he would take a right. And they're like, well, he took a left. Okay, how does this make you feel? After seeing this, does anything make you think differently? Does it change it? Doesn't do anything. And then it just kind of stumbled and kept like, what if he followed him down this way? What if he did this? What if he that? And I'm like, guys, it just showed him pulling into the school and leaving the school, and at one point Garrett, and just it didn't make me feel anything.
For me, that was kind of the clincher. He followed Garrett Phillips home that day. I mean, that's my take on the video. How do you refute that?
But we didn't have a license plate. We didn't know who was driving the car. We didn't know who was in the car.
It's not like CSI, it's not like the movies. Let's zoom in on the license plate, or better yet, let's zoom in on the person behind the wheel. Oh, that's Nick Hillary, we got him. It doesn't work that way.
The date is January 20th, 2014. The time is 10:08.
Manai Tafari for Mr. Oral Nicholas Hillary.
Thomas Mortati of Burke, Scalamero, Mortati, and Hurd for the defendants, and I'm here with Amanda Sherman of my office, as well as defendants Edward Tischler and Mark Murray. The civil suit is going to be a game changer, because the one person they really wanted to speak to the most, who basically said, I'm not talking to you anymore, on October 26th, is now not only going to talk to them, but he's going to do it under oath. Good morning, Mr. Hillary. As you know, my name is Tom Mortati, and I represent the defendants in a lawsuit that you've brought, and we're going to be here doing your deposition today. Just a couple of ground rules. I know you and You can't make this stuff up. I've been working in the civil career as an attorney doing defense work of one kind or another. I'd never, ever come across anything even remotely similar to this, nor likely will I ever. Monday, October 24, 2011, I want to start with the beginning of the day. Do you recall when you got up that day?
Objection to relevance. I typically get up around 6:30 in the morning.
People object for the record. If you look even at the other side's deposition, Tom Mortati, the attorney for the village, is objecting also quite a lot.
What vehicle were you driving, sir?
Objection relevance. I was driving my vehicle.
What vehicle was that?
A Honda.
Can you tell me the make and model, or rather the model and year?
Objection relevance. It's a CRV 209.
I was, to be honest with you, I was surprised that he was even talking to me, first of all, about any of this stuff.
2009.
Light blue?
That is correct.
I was pleased, obviously. I mean, my job is to defend the police, and again, my defense of the police is essentially to investigate this crime and prove that this guy did it.
This is great. And everyone's like, why is this great for you being sued? Well, he finally has to answer questions.
Do you recall entering the Potsdam High School parking lot in your vehicle that afternoon, October 24th, 2011?
Objection, relevance. Yes.
Why were you going to Potsdam High School that day?
Objection, relevance. To watch a soccer game.
And what did you do while you were in the parking spot?
Objection, relevance. Waiting for the rain to break.
Did it break?
No.
And where did you go?
I went home.
Need a break?
Yeah.
And we took a break after about 2 hours, and upstairs in the Potsdam Police Department are several members of the New York State Police. I went upstairs, walked in and said, not only is he talking, but he just put himself in that car in that parking lot at that time. And they were all absolutely amazed, and basically was, okay, get back down there and keep asking him more questions.
I have nothing to hide. But me talking to you versus talking to a group of police officers who's trying tricks and trades, it's two total different things. There's a stenographer who is taking down what I'm saying. There is an attorney who have my best interests at hand, who's here, and you getting to ask your questions.
Mr. Hillary, are you aware that approximately 7 seconds before you left the Potsdam High School parking lot onto Leroy Street, Garrett Phillips left the Potsdam High School parking lot onto Leroy Street?
Objection, relevance. Calls for facts not yet in evidence.
And you didn't see Garrett Phillips at all in that parking lot, correct?
Objection asked and answered. Relevance. No.
Mr. Hillary, are you aware that Garrett Phillips turned left out of the Potsdam High School parking lot that afternoon as he left Potsdam High School?
Objection. Relevance. No.
Are you aware, Mr. Hillary, that there is security camera video that shows you turning left in the same direction as Garrett Phillips, exiting Potsdam High School parking lot in your blue Honda CR-V that afternoon?
Objection. Relevance. Assumed facts. Not yet in evidence. No.
During the deposition, the civil attorney, Tom Mortati, very masterfully walked him through, painstakingly slow, a fantastic cross-examination of exactly everything he did on October 24th, 2011.
If you turned left out of the parking lot to go home to your apartment, what route did you take?
Through his masterful job, along with the evidence that we had, we were able to compile the case.
And I believe you testified in the 50H examination that you went straight home after you left the Potsdam High School that afternoon, correct?
He added the word, oh, you said you went straight home. No, I didn't say I went straight home. I said I went home.
Mr. Hillary, your apartment was to the right, up Leroy Street from Potsdam High School, correct?
Yes.
And you've told me under oath on 2 different occasions that you went home that day, leaving Potsdam High School parking lot, correct?
Yes.
The fastest way for you to get from the Potsdam High School parking lot to your apartment would be to turn right out of the parking lot onto Leroy Street to go in the direction of your apartment.
Do that one again.
Sure. And the fastest way for you to get to your apartment, driving from Potsdam High School, would be to exit the parking lot and to turn right onto Leroy Street, correct?
Yes.
And if you made a left out of that parking lot and Garrett Phillips was on the sidewalk on Leroy Street, approximately 7 to 8 seconds ahead of you, your testimony, you never saw him at any point while you were doing that?
Objection asked and answered. Compound. That is correct.
They have made it seem as if I lived 200 miles away. I was not supposed to be in that area.
Typically, if I make a left out the parking lot, I would be checking in my assistant coach who lived on Gardner Street, which is what I would normally do.
Is that what you did that afternoon?
I cannot recall.
You know, going to try and see if he was home at that point in time on my way home, it's normal. Sometimes we often do things just because it's what we consistently do.
You don't recall whether or not you stopped into Mr. Fairley's apartment on Garden Street that afternoon?
That is correct.
Clear. You left Potsdam High School parking lot to go home, right?
Yes.
But you have no recollection as to whether or not...
The grand jury spent over a 4-day period looking at the evidence, so there is a significant amount of evidence.
Rain says they have both physical and circumstantial evidence, some that came out recently during Hillary's deposition from his civil suit against the village of Potsdam for defamation.
Point on 100% innocent. 100% innocent. That's all I have to say.
Am I really living in a dream right now, or this is really happening? Everything that could have been done possible to prevent me from getting my freedom by the district attorney's office was done. For 70 days, I was held in jail, and every time there was a hearing, something new would come to the surface that required more time to explore, which means I get to sent back to jail while that didn't get explored. lived that for 70 days, you know, has definitely given me a certain level of drive to fight and do whatever it is for me to do, not to see the walls of those environments ever again. And finally, the judge decided, okay, pretty much enough was enough.
Where did you put your belt?
Right here. Last night. Dun, dun.
Okay.
Please walk. Love you.
Good morning.
Who's that?
Shauna.
Yeah. Shauna is awake, huh?
Yes.
Oh, we are grateful.
Before the whole thing, I was like friends with everybody, you know, carefree.
Well, I'm from around the area, and I know it's a fantastic school, and I wanted to be part of the community here.
Now you have to be like vigilant. You have to pay attention to everything. You can't say the wrong things. You can't talk to the wrong people. You can't go to like certain places. I'm part of his, like, where were you when this whole thing went down? So I was with my dad at that time. So they needed me to, like, cement that I was where I was with him when whatever was happening, so.
So I understand the chronology. Your daughter arrived home from school at approximately 4:30, is that correct?
Around 4:30.
Well, that day at soccer practice, so I came home from soccer and my dad was there.
So if your daughter arrived home at or about 4:30 p.m. on that afternoon, then you would have left for Potsdam High School at approximately 4:35 to 4:40 p.m.?
I know, around there.
The last we see of Garrett in the high school parking lot is at 4:52. And if we presume that he went straight home afterwards, it's about a 6-minute ride going at the speed he was going on his ripstick. He passed by some hospital cameras. Nick Hillary pulled out at 4:53. The call came in to the Village of Potsdam Police Department at 5:08.
Potsdam Police, Dispatcher Snyder.
Hi, my name is Marissa Vogel, and I have...
But you have to backtrack a little bit because
I'm not sure if I should call or not.
it's at least 2 minutes that Sean Hall and Marissa Vogler took to stop, listen, and then determine what they were going to do. So a very conservative estimate would be 2 minutes. So now you're putting the time of death at 5:06. So you have a very tight timeline of 4:53 when we last see Hillary on the high school video to 5:06 when we believe the murder occurred. That would have given him enough time to go down 2 blocks, park the car, and you have to remember he's extremely fit. He's not only got a 6-pack, he's got an 8-pack. He's very, very fit, and to jog 2 blocks to get to Garrett's home wouldn't take but 45 seconds max for him. We believe he had a key. We believe he opened the door. Garrett recognized that it was him, tried to push him back out, and then tried to retreat, and he was murdered.
And when you arrived home at your apartment, was anyone there?
Yes.
Your daughter, Shauna Kay?
Objection, Robbins. Yes.
What time did you arrive back at your apartment?
Objection, Robbins. A few minutes before 5.
How long did you remain at your apartment?
I was there until shortly after 5.
Well, when you say shortly after 5, what do you mean?
5:15.
And when you say a few minutes before 5, in terms of when you arrived there, what time was that?
Say about 5 to 5.
So you would have been in your apartment for an approximate 20-minute span between 4:55 p.m. and 5:15 p.m.
That is correct.
Mary Rain was relentless during the whole questioning part. She would ask me the same question more than once, or try and word it a little differently, or at the end she would like ask the same exact question like 10 times. I was like, I don't know what you want me to do. I'm not changing anything.
Here's how it goes. So they say to you, I remember what I had for dinner on June 30th, 2 years ago. Okay, what did you have for dinner on June 29th? I don't remember. What did you have for dinner on June 28th? I don't remember. What did you have for June 27th? I don't remember. But you remember what you had on June 30th. Is that true? Yes.
The lawyer at the time made sure that I had everything cemented in my mind of what had happened that day, because I felt like he knew that eventually I'd be brought in.
We call it walking them up and down the ladder. And that's what he chastised me about.
She was looking, I don't know what she was looking for, but she was digging hard for something.
Well, there's no defense attorney in the grand jury, so basically a DA can run a roughshod over the proceedings, which is what happened.
According to Judge Richards, we do know that when the District Attorney Mary Rain questioned Nick's daughter, who is one of his alibis, the judge had indicated that she was badgering her and asking her inappropriate questions.
And which is why it was dismissed.
With the case again in limbo, the community keeps searching for some resolution. Natasha Haverty was at the Remembrance Gathering and has more.
Justice for Garrett. Justice for Garrett. A lot has happened with that first word, justice, in the past 6 months. One suspect was finally arrested and arraigned, but the proceedings were mishandled and charges were later dismissed. But this evening, people are here to remember Garrett.
Are we ready? 1, 2, 3.
Garrett!
Yes, we were working on this big investigative story, but we were also, as reporters in the North Country, going to the balloon release ceremony, on the anniversary of Garrett's death. We were also covering small town events that were each a tiny piece of this bigger story. I can't emphasize that enough. It's you are in the checkout line with the defense attorney. That small town thing is real.
Father God, we stand in your presence, Father.
And as you gather here today, remember this. Through the power of prayer, justice will be served.
The judge indicated that there was sufficient evidence to indict him. I just think you did these things wrong, so I'm going to dismiss it. So we basically provided the exact same presentation the second time.
Now, this is the second time Hillary has been indicted for Phillips' death. Oral Nick Hillary was back in a St. Lawrence County courtroom Monday. Hillary was arraigned on a charge of second-degree murder.
The DA's office has until 30 days before trial to hand over all photo and video evidence.
They're going to find what I found. The video inculpates. That means it tends to show that Oral Nicholas Hillary was at the crime scene, was present during the time of the murder, and in fact is evidence that he did murder Garrett Phillips.
Whatever videotape they could have gotten their hands on, the one thing that I know deep inside, that it was not going to reveal what they are trying to showcase to the public. So they figure, not having what they need, they're just gonna manipulate what they claim they have to prove their theory.
Justice for Garrett is justice for Nick. But the prosecutors in this case don't want to solve this case. They want to get a conviction from this case. Nick is seeking the same truth that will set Garrett's spirit free.
When we had stories about anything to do with the Garrett Phillips case, little ones, I'm talking about the bail hearing is set for, June 30th. We would have to shut down our comments every time. Because within an hour of the story going online, to quote our web guy, abusive, vitriolic comments, most hateful speech people are capable of.
I remember leaving one of the hearings and a lot of Nick's supporters were there. And somebody yelled out, "Why haven't we heard anything about John Jones?" And that was the first time I had heard the name John Jones, and I didn't know who Jones was.
Much better case could have been put together against John Jones than was put together against Nick.
You know, we know that his behavior was volatile. You know, Tandy knew that, Nick knew that. You know, is that a motivation for killing a boy? I don't know. But it shows that maybe you're slightly unhinged.
There were allegations that he was an angry man, a racist guy, and that the love of his life was now sleeping with a black man. You know, listening to this and trying to process this stuff, like why would this former boyfriend go after, you know, this boy?
Talk about defamatory. The defense team had maligned John Jones for years leading into this thing.
She actually wrote a complaint 10 months before Garrett died, stating that because of Deputy John Jones, I fear for the safety of my children.
I didn't get the statement directly. I got it indirectly from my boss. And I read it, and I said to my boss, I go, "That's not Tandy's writing." And it was typed. And he's like, "How do you know that?" I go, "Because Tandy doesn't know the definition of some of these words in here." I go, "So there's no way that she wrote this." And he's like, "Well, that's interesting." I go, "We'll find out someday who wrote this." I go, "Because Tandy didn't."
If you write 4 different letters, sign 4 different letters, and send it to 4 different people and get it after getting it notarized, that's the truth. Within the body of the letter, Tandy states that John Jones sent her threatening text messages. Tandy also says that Jones sued her in small claims court as retaliation for dating Nick.
The time, 6:16 p.m.
Potsdam Police, Dispatcher Schneider.
Hey, this is John Jones. How you doing?
Good, John. How are you?
Good. Hey, listen, Candy Cyrus, the Phillips boy that just brought to the emergency room, they said the police were called also.
Mm-hmm.
You know who responded to that?
Yeah, Officer Wentworth was up there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Officer Wentworth.
Okay. Are they still at the residence? Or?
No. Well, actually, can you hold on?
Sure. You guys have to see that girl. You guys know about.
Do you know where Tandy is?
Yeah, she's right here with me.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, she's at the emergency room?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were together from the beginning, and then they spent the night together, and then at the police station the next morning, they said, "We're not speaking to you guys without being together."
Obviously, one person that we're interested in speaking to.
You have someone who now we know was a suspect at some point, John Jones, holding the hand of Tandy Cyrus, sitting across the desk from his buddy, Mark Murray. So my thoughts are, like, this is really messy. When we learned about that, reading those depositions, it was just another kind of step on this road of, okay, we need to talk about John Jones. There's no denying that he took part in the investigation. He helped in the investigation.
There was nothing that he hid from us, or there's no level of cooperation that he didn't go to try to help the investigation. He cooperated 110%, provided his DNA sample, fingerprints, let us photograph his body.
So the person of John Jones, here we see no face shots, no dehumanizing, still has his tie on. So nothing for anyone to look at to even know who this picture of, except it says the person of Jones. So why bring in someone if these are the pictures you're gonna take? And if they're both suspects, why is the person of Jones so much different from the person of Nick? And what's the difference besides skin color?
A big treasure trove for us as reporters is the civil case. Because when Nick Hillary filed that civil case, not long after the investigation began, as for us reporters, that's all public documents, so all those depositions, all the testimony of law enforcement saying we didn't have physical evidence. to be able to read a lot of officers that were involved in the case, to see Ed Tischler's remarks, to see Mark Murray's remarks answering, no, we didn't have any physical evidence. I mean, it's interesting to think that the first theory before Nick Hillary, even as we've heard in the calls, is some kids were getting rowdy, you know, and something happened with kids. Well, those kids' fingerprints aren't in the database. My last story for North Country Public Radio was this story. It sounds weird and paranoid, but it wasn't a coincidence that we aired it when I left town. At the time, it was a big thing to air anything about John Jones.
John Jones is still a deputy sheriff, and again, Jones was at some point considered a suspect, all of which raises big questions about trust, about public safety, about what it means when a local police officer was also a suspect in a murder that's under investigation.
It was a big thing to kind of uncover these declarative statements from multiple people saying we have no DNA evidence. We kept thinking, how many other cases are there like this around the country? If anything, I think we thought, this must happen more than we know. When national media started paying attention, it was just really affirming for us as journalists of, wow, this thing that we followed our curiosity on, or that raised some big questions for us in our community, is somehow universal enough that it applies to big questions the whole country might be facing.
If the facts had been exactly as they are, but Nick Hillary had been white, would the New York Times be covering this story as it has?
Well, I think you have to step back a second and look at what's going on in the country right now. The issues of race and law enforcement, it is something people are talking about, it's something people are concerned about.
It is through the information we got in the civil suit that the media took a real interest before, right? Most times media take interest after someone's been wrongfully convicted, right? And the person's sitting there for 25 years.
Hillary's been very fortunate and very blessed in not just having information, but in having friends.
A lot of people empathize with him. Barry Johnson and Greg are perfect examples of that.
Hillary's new lead attorneys are criminal defense lawyer Earl Ward and civil rights lawyer Norman Siegel out of New York City. The two have consulted in the case since the fall.
How did I get involved? The Amsterdam News owner, publisher, called me last summer and said, please come. I want you to hear about a case. I'd like you to get involved. I said that I would get involved. My one condition was that Earl Ward be co-counsel with me. And then we made phone calls. We talked to people. Everything we've been told is totally in opposite to what the prosecution is trying to make Nick Hillary out to be.
And I think Pete has the same sort of view here.
I've known Nick for over 2 years now. It's always been a calm conversation. In fact, when you discuss how people are vilifying him in social media, how they're calling him names, not once has he erupted in anger like you'd expect. He's just calmly said the truth will come out. I'm going to fight this, and I'm not going to do it that way.
I know that there are some people who are very charged about this case, and people that were friends of mine that don't really talk to me right now. You know, and they may not ever again, no matter how this case goes.
This is news from North Country Public Radio.
Thanks very much for sorting out the latest turn in the Garrett Phillips murder case.
District Attorney Mary Rain says DNA evidence points the finger directly at accused killer Nick Hillary.
Mark Murray, who's the lead investigator, testified under oath. There was no fingerprints match. There was no DNA match. There was no eyewitnesses. They basically had no case. And then all of a sudden, years and years later, Fitzpatrick comes on the case, takes a lead role, and all of a sudden they have this DNA match.
The Star Mix concluded very, very simply that the DNA mixture under Garrett Phillips' fingernails, one of them was Garrett Phillips, and the other was a partial profile of a individual who, in likelihood ratio terms, was millions of times more likely to be Nick Hillary than a random stranger.
We knew that something was so suspicious with it because we knew it had been tested at the lab. We knew they had 100-something samples, nothing matched. Now, how all of a sudden they got this match?
I think that they pounded and pounded and pounded until they got that square peg in the round hole.
The last physical act the kid does is try to tell us who did it. Scratch Hillary's face somewhere, not deep enough to cause scratching. Now, he's not thinking, I'm going to leave this guy's DNA under his fingernails, but I'm speaking metaphorically.
We've all heard the phrase that DNA is the finger of God pointing at the accused. This is not that case. This is the finger of a statistician pointing at Nick Hillary, and that is not what DNA should be all about.
What we're talking about is a very, very, very small amount of DNA.
DNA has this mythology of being infallible. If you watch CSI, it is that thing. It is, well, we've got the evidence, it's right here on the DNA. And I think particularly for jurors who are probably not accustomed to kind of high scientific theory, this is a smoking gun.
If the jury has to hear it,
I mean, to sit here and tell you I'm scared would be an understatement. I mean, some of the lawyers don't even understand, much less a lay juror.
Hillary's trial is scheduled to start September 6th in Canton. What was already considered a tough case for the prosecution to prove just got even tougher.
Some very complex DNA test results will not be allowed.
It might have been key evidence in the upcoming Nick Hillary murder trial. Now a judge has tossed it out of court.
We find the DNA, not find, but find an expert that can testify as to the significance of the DNA evidence, and it winds up getting thrown out.
Nick is really excited, but he's also worried because we still have a trial date. Having done over 100 trials, I know one thing, is that anything can happen in front of a jury.
Dear Shoney K, my name's Norman Siegel.
You know me, Earl Ward.
And you know this guy, right?
Yep.
This is all in preparation for the trial. And we are giving serious consideration to calling you as one of our witnesses. So, you've been through this before a little, right?
Yes.
You testified in the grand jury on 2 occasions, right?
Yes.
You told the truth. All we were looking for was the truth from you. And again, I think you're going to make a terrific witness. So, just don't be nervous as we, go through this.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
You look nervous.
I'm just a little nervous.
Why are you
I'm just nervous. I don't really have like a reason. It's just what happens every time. I just get a little nervous.
They have no idea, truly no idea, the negative impact they have imposed and put upon my kids. The 2 oldest are good with their knowledge of what's going on. So, with me saying, hey, I'm going off, I'm gonna address the situation once and for all, they're good. The 2 youngest, they're still not as cognitive to understand the big picture. Not too hard. Let me see. Yeah. You know, but for Elijah, he's really at that stage where, you know, he needs answers and he will ask questions. Yeah, exactly. You know, saying, I mean, that's all we need is just good eyes. You know, for look over the all necessary moving parts and see where I'm going. You know, seeing. Yeah. Yeah, Saturday look good. You know? See? Yes, Rasta. All right, one love. Yes. Yeah, so, you know, we're back again. All right, come on, give me the Elijah, let's go.
Are you leaving tomorrow?
No. Okay. So, yeah, well, I gotta go back up in a couple of days, right?
Why?
Huh?
Why?
Up back to the North Country. You know, we gotta some stuff to finish up.
But can we come?
If you could come?
Yeah.
Well, maybe on the weekends when you don't have school, you could come. Or I will come down, you know? No need to worry, okay?
Yeah, can we come?
No, because you gotta be here to go to school.
Yeah, I know. But a day before the school starts, can we come with you?
That's not gonna be feasible.
I want the big machine.
Okay.
Daddy, a big machine. He would just feel the bone.
It's not gonna be possible for that to work out.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. You'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Good night. Go get the towel. Yes. Go get it.
Okay. All right. Love you. Maybe. Okay. Love you. Yeah. Okay. I'll come back later.
I think having all of this drawn out for so long has affected us in that it feels like a book that needs to be closed, and you can't close it yet because you haven't read that last page. It feels unfinished, and it's just hung there over us.
Everybody is upset about this. The poor child's family has gone through a lot. The community is in turmoil. This needs to be taken care of.
Because, I mean, the evidence is probably good. It's just that they don't like the way it was handled. Yeah. But it can't be used now.
With Hillary's 2-hour deposition, I think things were looking good. You could ask everybody in the world where they were on the 24th of that night that Garrett was taken. They're not gonna lie. They're not gonna need to lawyer up. They're gonna not hide DNA. One person killed him.
The family has kept it in front of all of us, which they should, for the last 5 years. I'm hoping, as everyone else is, that this is resolved and that they do have proof and that there is something that comes out, conviction comes out, whether it's Nick or whomever, but that they can put this to rest.
I'll feel awful if anything that I've done,
ends up hurting. You know what I mean? I don't know how that works in court or in the law. You know, you can twist things however you want.
I've been here in years, man. Yeah, this is the regular lunch.
I'm just an average person. I'm just in it.
This case has been adjudicated on the streets and in the price choppers and in the parking lots for years. Now, this is a real trial. This is really happening.
We were really worried going into the jury process that we were going to run into a roadblock.
The commissioner of jurors told me that 1,000 people from St. Lawrence County have been summoned for jury duty, and that's 4 times as many as usual.
We were worried that we were going to have some very opinionated people on the jury. And we were worried that there wasn't going to be one juror in the courtroom who didn't know anything about this case.
Turn around for me, please.
No, 1 second.
Thank you, sir.
Everyone says they're going to be fair. You've just got to sit back and decide if this is the person who really can be.
I thought voir dire went excellent. We got 10 jurors the first pass. One of the jurors I knew, and I felt that he would do a very fair job. He would give both sides a fair shake, so I was very confident that we had good 10 jurors.
I drove all the way home. I live about an hour away from where the trial's happening. I got home and I got the call from Norm and Earl and Kate. And they said, God, you got to come back. We got to talk about this some more. So dropped whatever I was doing, hopped in my car, and I drove back, and we talked about it for another 3 or 4 hours.
The defense came into chambers looking like somebody just kicked their puppy in front of them, and I had no idea why they had such long faces. And they were kind of hemming and hawing, saying we were up all night talking to the defendant, and I thought, is he going to plead? I didn't have any idea what was going on. You know, he wants to do this, and I'm like, what is this? What is this? Tell us.
Hillary chose himself to go bench.
I would never classify myself as a risk taker, you know, but after the first round of seating, and there was just no one who I can say with great sense of comfort would be a pair of minds.
We had actually found out after the fact that one of the jurors was actually friends with, that they had picked, was friends with the Phillips family. It's too connected up there. Everyone's too close with the family.
And I think 5 years of poisoning turned justice for Garrett into lynch Nick Hillary.
The trial will be a trial by a judge. We understand the enormity of what Nick is charged with, and we take that responsibility seriously. As you can hear my voice sort of crackling there, which indicates it's not just my brain, my whole body recognizing what I just said. So,
Can I ask how Nick's feeling?
I'm feeling very well, thank you.
okay.
When we actually had a trial date and we were all sitting in court together, it just seemed like some kind of weird, surreal dream that this was actually taking place.
Good morning, everybody. Please be seated. We're on the record. This is the people of the state of New York against Oral Nicholas Hillary. Mr. Fitzpatrick, your opening statement.
Thank you very much. It's normally at this point, Judge, where either you or some of the litigants would say to a jury to keep an open mind. And I don't think, Judge, I've ever beseeched someone more in a criminal case to keep an open mind than I would in this matter right now. Because the narrative of this case up to this point has been very, very simple. A group of bungling, incompetent cops from a small town in upstate New York. These guys, very experienced lawyers, just selected this individual to decide this case, and I wanted to disavow him of the narrative which has been established at this point for 4.5 years, that this case is razor thin, that this case is nothing but a bunch of, upstate hicks that want to grab the only black guy in town and put him on trial. None of that stuff is true.
From day one, the murder investigation focused almost exclusively on Nick Hillary. You will learn that after a thorough inspection of the deceased's apartment at 100 Market Street, the police found no fingerprints, no hairs, or no fibers linking Nick Hillary to this crime.
Let's examine in what is the most conclusive piece of guilt against this man. At the exact instant Garrett reaches Leroy Street, the defendant backs up, Kay turns out of the parking lot, and according to him, at least a dozen times under oath, I went straight home, back to my daughter. Except the camera doesn't lie. Mr. Hillary doesn't turn right, he turns left because he's hunting Garrett Phillips.
This is all the video will show you, but the prosecution wants you to jump to conclusions. You will not see or hear any credible evidence of Nick or Nick's car approaching, at, or leaving 100 Market Street during the critical time when Nick exits the parking lot until Officer Mark Wentworth found the deceased. And why? Because he wasn't there.
Now, meanwhile, Judge, just outside in the back of Market Street, there's a young man by the name of Andrew Carranza and his then girlfriend, Shannon Harris, and they're in the process of changing a flat tire on Carranza's truck. Andrew's now deployed with the United States Marine Corps, but he'll be here to describe what he saw and what he heard. Meanwhile,
when Nick came to the trial, I was hired by Nick's attorneys to locate and interview witnesses to find out what they would know and say at the trial. I had learned the DA's office was going to fly Andrew back from Hawaii, and he was a vital witness in this case. So I called him, and he apparently jumped to the conclusion that I was working for the DA's office quite quickly. I didn't tell him any different. I didn't feel I had a responsibility to tell him that. He said, they're flying me from Hawaii to testify in this. I'll be showing up Monday in Canton. Fine, what are you going to testify to? Well, I saw a black guy on the second floor, the silhouette of somebody that fits Nick's I talked with him as much as I could, went on, and the other witness that I was trying to locate was Andrew's girlfriend, Shannon.
Don Tracy called me, told me he was an investigator. He stopped over. He questioned me about what I was doing that day, what I heard, what I saw.
We were changing his tire, and we kept hearing this ripping noise.
The decision was made by me to fly Andrew Carranza in. It was my judgment that Andrew described the noises that he heard a little bit better.
Police asked both of us if we had seen anybody in the window, any movement, anything like that, and we both said no.
This window right here on the top and the outside was the window that had the screen forced out. So these parking spots right here would have been occupied by the Carranzas. This being Andrew's. Would have been very hard to see a body standing in that window. And if there was, it certainly would have been a time to say it at that time. And they did state they didn't see anything. Their statements indicate that.
We went over the statements multiple times, and nothing was different. Afterward, he told me Andrew had an opposing story. I told Don Andrew was trying to get a hold of me, and I had called him anyway, and I did record the entire conversation with Andrew, just in case he said he was making it up.
And now I feel like you're changing your story or something, and I don't know, Andrew, but I am not going to go to court and lie for something about you, if that makes sense. If they question me on it, I'm gonna have to be honest and tell them.
You're lying because you don't remember at all.
I think I would remember because it would be in my statement.
I remember seeing somebody in the window being nosy.
Yeah, well, you
That's
saw
exactly
somebody,
how it works.
but you didn't necessarily see Hillary, so I don't understand how, even if you did, that would be substantial evidence.
That's the thing. The person, I could see the person, but I couldn't make out the person because he was so fucking black. I couldn't fucking see who it was.
Andrew,
and I knew it was,
come on.
No, I'm dead serious. That's exactly what the fuck's going on.
Andrew clearly knew what had to be said in that trial to make a difference. And he was willing to step up and do it.
Wow. 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 So is she willing to testify? Is Shannon Harris on the witness list? No, right? Don spoke to her. Investigator spoke to her. And she says Carranza's full of shit. Yeah, this is crazy. That's a big one. That's a big one. Don, thank you very much. I'll fill the team in on what's going on here. But that's big. Thank you. Okay, cool. Okay.
We have enough
All right.
plates?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plenty of everything. Okay, great. All right, Don, thank you. Bye-bye. Don spoke to the girlfriend of their star witness, and she says he's full of shit.
Awesome.
All right. Good.
That's great.
Okay, who's saying this?
Shannon Harris. The girlfriend who was there. Who's present.
Oh, the girl changing the tire?
Yep. Yeah.
Super good win. Good win.
Morning.
The next day, when the trial had resumed, I happened to bump into Dan Manor from the DA's office. And Dan knew what I knew, because he looked at me, he says, "What are you doing? Talk to my witness." And I said, "Dan, how could you bring him all the way from Hawaii to testify to something that you knew was not the truth?" And he said, "I have rules to follow. I have people I'm responsible to."
Dan Manor would have spoken to Carranza to logistically get him flown in. Nobody interviewed him prior to flying him in. I had no knowledge that he was going to say it was a black male at the window until I spoke to him the day before he testified.
Why didn't anybody ask Mr. Carranza about the color of the man who was looking out that window. He said he saw him looking out the window, but no one asked the description of the man. Was there?
If there was a person looking out that window and that was an African-American person, he would have said.
There was no way we could ethically allow Andrew Carranza to now say suddenly 4 years later that, oh yeah, it was a black male. In fact, I'm fairly certain he was prepared to say that it was Nick Hillary at the window.
If we had not had Shannon Harris to come and testify, or not planned on calling her after he testified, who would know the difference? Knowing that we had witnesses who would contradict their statements in real time and blow this up in their faces, they did not know that when they booked his flight from Hawaii to come up. They found that out after he was in Potsdam.
Yes, it's very loud.
Mr. Dumas?
Your Honor, we do have one other issue. It's come to our understanding that the prosecution has had investigators interrogate or at least interview an individual by the name of Gregory Brown. It's further our understanding that he gave information that, in looking at it, may be favorable to the defendant.
Judge, I didn't take Mr. Dumas's remarks as accusatory, but essentially it's being suggested that I'm withholding exculpatory evidence regarding a witness I've never heard of. So I will go through our archives and talk to the investigators on the case and attempt to identify Mr. Brown. And obviously, if there's anything exculpatory, I will know my obligations.
DA Fitzpatrick has said, well, who's Gregory Brown? I said, I don't know who Gregory Brown is. And then as he started explaining that he was an inmate, I was like, oh, yes, I do remember something about the state police going out and interviewing this person at Attica.
Okay. Can I see counsel in chambers, please?
We got into chambers and they handed us 2 pages. And we looked at it and we all just kind of jaw dropped. Because this piece of paper said that John Jones entered 100 Market Street approximately 15 minutes before Garrett Phillips entered 100 Market Street.
So my question is, how would he even know who John Jones is? John says that he knows Greg Brown from having played football with him. You know, he's like, I didn't know him by name, but I knew who he was.
Do you know G Money? I go, who's G Money? And I'm not trying to stereotype it, but I assume it was a black man. And I said, no, I don't hang around with a lot of black people, so no, I don't know who he is. And he goes, you don't know Greg Brown? I said, no. I go, help me out with this. And he goes, he used to bounce at this local establishment. And I go, oh, yeah, I know him. I go, why? He goes, apparently he saw you come out of, or go into Tandy's house that day. I go, seriously? I thought it was a joke. He goes, yeah.
When they handed us that document, I took one look at it, and that was probably the one instance in my whole career, clearest cut Brady material I've ever seen. Brady material is material that's favorable to the defense, something that might show that Nick Hillary didn't commit the crime. And it's one of those things that you take a step back as a defense attorney, and you're working late at night, and you say to yourself, wait a minute, if this is just coming out now, what else is there? What else don't we know? That's why these rules are in place. They're to protect someone like Nick Hillary
They're to protect his constitutional rights.
Here's the problem. Okay. Should it have been disclosed? Absolutely. Inexcusable that it wasn't disclosed. In Mary's mind, there's irrefutable proof that John Jones did not commit the crime. Ergo, someone alleging that John Jones did commit the crime is lying. So in her mind, it went from potentially exculpatory to just total BS. Can't make that decision as a prosecutor. All I have is my reputation when I'm appearing in court, and I thought about, just packing it up and leaving, but I couldn't do that to Tandy and the Phillips family.
The prosecution's witnesses today, but instead the defense got up and asked Judge Felix Katina for a dismissal.
Now, that's an extreme remedy to the situation, but this is an extreme case. We've got a man who's on trial for his life here. This is a murder in the second, and they're hiding this. I think that it should be an extreme remedy.
The judge is the judge and the jury. He is the man. He will decide Nick Hillary's fate. And so for him to sit in a courtroom and someone say, oh, by the way, we forgot to give some information to the defense team, I'm sure that must have set off some alarm bells for him in his brain, where he was like, what's the prosecution doing here? And I think that probably was part of the defense's strategy as well.
Earl, you said where you're going now, and then we'll let you go.
We are headed over to the jail to speak to Gregory Brown.
They brought him down fairly quickly, huh?
Yes, fairly quickly. With rapid speed. I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, they didn't use Gregory Brown, he must be a whack job. Gregory Brown is not a whack job. He's not a wacko. He was very credible, and he didn't remember everything, in part because there's been a passage of time.
The idea that somehow John Jones was at that building, did you find it credible, or was it a case of there being too many holes in his account to use it in court?
The fact that John Jones was not only there, but went into 100th Market, which I thought was important, I found that credible.
There's no way in hell John Jones, the guy is on video walking his dog at the time the murder takes place. You can't have better evidence. And his DNA didn't match the DNA profile under the fingernails. It wasn't John Jones because, as I've said before, who brings their dog to a murder? Nobody.
Coincidences happen. 29 seconds after John Jones pulled into his driveway, Garrett rode by on his ripstick. Now, I think the prosecution would clearly say that's a coincidence.
There's a camera on the side of Kent-Potsdam Hospital, and among other things, it just coincidentally also captures John Jones's house because he happens to live on Cottage Street at that time. Two different cameras. You see Garrett coming down the north side sidewalk of Cottage. He gets to the driveway that you would turn right to go towards the ER. The second camera from the ER that shows the parking lot shows Garrett basically passing from left to right as he's traveling down Cottage Street. They don't pass each other waving or anything like that. You don't see that on camera.
It's a coincidence with John Jones, but it's not a coincidence with Nick Hillary. John Jones, who was the former boyfriend of Tandy Collins. John Jones, who didn't like Nick Hillary. John Jones, who once pushed Tandy Collins. John Jones, who had sued Tandy Collins. Nick being in the parking lot, in their view, is evidence of murder. I submit to you, Judge, it is not.
What we now have to do is weave together all of the depositions, the grand jury testimony, the transcripts of the days of testimony so far of 28 witnesses, and put together a concise, powerful statement.
There's always pressure when someone's life is on the line.
I mean, Nick loses. We lose. He's going away for the rest of his life. He has 2 young kids, 2 young boys, really cute little boys who love him. And last time I saw him, kids was holding on to him and saying, "Don't go." And so it was really heartwarming and at the same time scary. Can we get Fitzpatrick in there also?
Yes. I'll double check on that, I think. Yep. Great. Good, so on page 76.
I've seen a lot of injustices, and I just hope that this is not one of them. And we're hoping that we can win this case for him so that he can get back to his life. The prosecution has pieced together, they've cobbled together fabrics of so-called evidence. And they've given you, Judge, a torn and tattered quilt. And they've given this torn and tattered quilt to you, and they've called it circumstantial evidence. They're trying to paint this picture of Nick as an obsessed psychopath who, unable to get the love of his life, kills her child. Does that make sense? I submit to you, it makes absolutely no sense. It's not the type of theory you bring into a courtroom and ask a judge to find a man guilty of murder in the 2nd degree. What they're trying to do here, Your Honor, what they're trying to do here is to demonize this man. I know the prosecutor's going to stand up here, and he's going to say to you in the loudest voice as he can, you have to convict Nick Hillary. And he will say to you, I have proven my case beyond a reasonable doubt. Judge, this case is riddled with doubt.
I can't emphasize enough, Judge, how in this case, there's 2 possible explanations. You have to give the benefit of the doubt to the defendant. But possibility number 1 is either Nick Hillary is the victim of the most bizarre convergence of coincidences since man first learned to write and record history, and he sits there an innocent man, or on October the 24th, 2011, obsessed by his breakup with Tandy Cyrus, enraged that it came down to the needs of a 12-year-old boy, as if there was some moral confluence between his needs and the needs of a 12-year-old boy, he entered that boy's apartment, he chased him down, he dragged him into a bedroom, and he spent 90 seconds choking the life out of him. And he's been lying about it ever since. What kind of mind can orchestrate something like that, Judge? The same type of mind that can look you right in the eye and say that when I leave the Potsdam Parking High School parking lot and my apartment is 4/10 of a mile in a straight line to the right, sometimes I go left, and it doesn't make any difference to me. That's the type of mind that we're dealing with. And of course, you gotta believe me because I'm Nick Hillary and I said it, and that's good enough, should be good enough for you. And we're here, Your Honor, because of tapes. And frankly, none more important than Exhibit 71. And there's the last time we ever see Garrett Phillips alive. Garrett Phillips wasn't killed by someone passing through town who hates little boys. He was killed by Nick Hillary. He wanted to be with his friends. He wanted to occasionally watch TV, Judge. He wanted to play on his ripstick. He wanted to be 12 years old and not be dictated to. And that cost him his life. Now Garrett belongs to the ages. He's forever 12. I wish you Godspeed, Judge. I pray to God you've seen this defendant for what he truly is. A person who, with premeditation, murdered a beautiful 12-year-old little boy. And he did it so arrogantly and stupidly that he can now finally be brought to justice. Thank you, Your Honor.
With regard to the court's decision, the court's verdict, I anticipate Wednesday or Thursday of next week. Then we'll stand in recess to await the court's verdict. Thank you, everybody.
A verdict is expected at some point this week in the Nick Hillary murder trial. The former Clarkson University soccer coach is facing a second-degree murder charge for the 2011 death of his ex-girlfriend's son. We'll be back in the courtroom as soon as a verdict is reached.
What, Daddy?
Look at what I got right here.
Oh, my hot dog.
It is. It's a special kind of hot dog. Just trust me, okay?
No, that's not a hot dog.
It's not a hot dog?
That's pepperoni.
That's pepperonis?
Yes.
No, this is better than pepperonis, man. Good job, Jojo. Good job, Jojo. Wake up every day and we're trying to enjoy every second, every minute with your kids, all the while trying to protect them and shelter them from the unknown.
I need all the way to the top.
Huh?
I need all the way to the top.
Okay.
All the way.
All right. Come on, good. Yeah, yeah. Okay, all right, let's bye. Give me beso. Give me beso. I love you. I'll see you in a few, okay?
Mama beso.
One more beso. All right. Give daddy beso now, son, Jojo. Come, give me beso.
Hey, how are you gonna work this out?
One more. All right. I'm gonna give you a sound in a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
Remember the promise. What's the promise?
Don't cry.
Okay, good, good. Yep, remember. All right. All right, Jojo. Be 5, man. All right. Perfect. Be strong now, okay, buddy? Right? Everything's gonna be all right. Okay? praying continuously that the correct decision will come down, and I will have to get down on my hands and my knees and start rebuilding, you know? Because everything I've built up until this point has been totally destroyed.
No matter what happens, you know, there's no real like reparations that are gonna go back to Nick's family for all the fact that he lost his job, for the debt that his family went into. His name is kind of ruined. Google Nick Hillary, his name is next to the word murder. And even if it's that he's innocent, he's stuck with that for the rest of his life.
Judge Felix Katina will hand down his verdict in the Nick Hillary murder trial. We'll bring that to you live at 10 a.m.
One or two more words, guilty or not guilty.
How are you feeling today? Confident?
You can look at it one of two ways. You can look at it that Nick Hillary did this, that he strangled a 12-year-old, either out of rage or to punish Tandy, and then clambered out that back window and has managed since then to convey himself as an innocent victim, which would be an act of true pathology. Or that someone else did this and somehow entered that apartment, strangled this little boy for reasons unknown, then clambered out that apartment and escaped into the night and has never been heard from again. And either one of those options are frightening.
Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and welcome back to St. Lawrence County Court. This is a continuation of the people of the state of New York against Oral Nicholas Hillary, indictment number 2015-015. The matter was scheduled this morning for the court to deliver its verdict. Mr. Hillary, if you'll please rise. Defendant was indicted on January 19, 2015 for the October 24, 2011 murder of Garrett Phillips. A trial was had before this court, sitting without a jury over the course of 3 weeks. The case against the defendant is entirely based upon circumstantial evidence. Because of this, the court must review the evidence in this case under a rigorous standard. Accordingly, it is the judgment of this court that as to the charge of murder in the second degree as charged in the indictment, the defendant, Oral Nicholas Hillary, is found not guilty. There having been an acquittal, the court shall enter an order pursuant to section 16050 of the Criminal Procedure Law. Bail is exonerated and the defendant is released. Ladies and gentlemen, this court is adjourned. Thank you.
Someone killed Garrett Phillips, but it wasn't Nick Hillary.
Families were extremely distraught. They've lost a 12-year-old boy, and now they see the murder of that 12-year-old boy walking out of the courtroom free.
The criminal justice system worked here. It is important that the public fully understand how our criminal justice system is intended to work, and that sometimes it actually does work.
I'm 100% certain that Nick Hillary was the man. There will be no search for anybody else. He was the only person that committed this crime. I'm 100% certain of that.
Conversation that you might have had with Tandy.
Tandy is a very private person. I just simply expressed my condolences. And that was about it. And she said, I know you guys tried.
So I just want to say that this team, this legal team, is not oblivious to the fact that there's a family that even after 5 years still grieves. And I think the judge, despite all of that emotion that was exhibited in that courtroom, despite all the pain that he saw from that family, he had the courage and he had the strength to apply the law to the facts. And after doing so, he determined that Nick Hillary was not guilty.
Yeah.
The man of God, you serve a living God.
It's the second time, some of my teammates have seen me cry.
What was the other time?
It was when we won the national championship. Yeah, so that was the first time.
Are you going to go back to coaching?
I mean, I've never ruled it out, but at the same token, the focus right now at this moment is to get back with my family and try to get back as best sense of normalcy within their life, and then start to explore the possibility going forward. Brother Norm.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, we'll do. We'll do.
Careful.
Yes,
careful.
yes, yes.
Even though it's over, it ain't over.
Exactly.
It's never over.
It's never over. Exactly. Hey, buddy. What's going on?
It's done. Yeah. It's over. About time.
Hey.
Still, why are you still dressed up from the meeting?
Well, didn't have time to change.
Let's go.
All right. Here we go.